Hello, everyone, and welcome to UCalgary's What's Happening in Alberta webinar. I'm Chancellor Deborah Yedlin, and I'll be your moderator for this afternoon's discussion. If you've participated in one of our previous webinars, welcome back. And to all of our new viewers, thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to be exploring what's happening in Alberta's workforce. But before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we're hosting this webinar on the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. Now, we started this webinar series at the onset of the pandemic, 19 months ago, to inform and support our community members by connecting them primarily with COVID-related research and resources. But since then, we've expanded our focus to include a wider variety of topics, but our purpose remains the same: to share knowledge and insight from UCalgary experts, all with the goal to empower the community to take on the challenges we face together. Today, I'm joined by a panel of distinguished guests, and together we will be discussing employment in Alberta and the importance of retaining our workforce when many are leaving for other provinces. For this discussion, it's important to note that June 2021 marked the fourth quarter in a row where more people left Alberta for other provinces than arrived. In the past 49 years, Alberta saw an average annual net gain of almost 9,000 people between the ages of 15 and 29 moving to this province. But in the last 5 years, that number has slipped to about 1,000. And Alberta saw a net loss of almost 1,700 people in their 20s. And that represents the tax base of the future. The University of Calgary is fundamental to the growth of Calgary. And in January 2021, UCalgary's total estimated impact was $16.5 billion. Great research universities make the world better around them by creating knowledge and by creating jobs. Like the exciting news that Emphasis will create up to 1,000 jobs in quantum computing right here in Calgary. Because the university was a leader in the field, producing graduates and ideas that companies like Emphasis needs, that's why they came here. We're also helping Calgary's economy grow and diversify through the innovation ecosystem. Dozens of companies are using the University Innovation Corridor. We're helping startups get going. And just as UCalgary helped the energy industry flourish and grow, we're helping new industries grow too. With that, I'd like to introduce to you our three distinguished panelists for today's discussion. Jeanette Sutherland is the Director of Edge Up, Workforce and Productivity at Calgary Economic Development. Jeanette is with Calgary Economic Development, and in 2019, Edge Up, which is the short form for Energy to Digital Growth Education and Upskilling Project, a multi-stakeholder program, was launched in Calgary targeting those individuals displaced by the change in the oil and gas sector. The program tests new approaches for workers to develop skills and re-engage with technology. Her experience in workforce innovation and development leads to the belief that business, government, and nonprofits should work collaboratively to develop long-term solutions for Calgary's workforce challenges. Alice de Koning is the Academic Director at the Hunter Hub for Entrepreneurial Thinking and the RBC Teaching Fellow in Entrepreneurial Thinking. Alice is also a senior instructor at the Haskayne School of Business, and she graduated from INSEAD with a PhD and the Ivy School of Business with an MBA. Her research considers how social and institutional contexts affect entrepreneurial cognition and opportunity recognition. Her current projects include metaphors for entrepreneurship in public discourse, opportunity identification by entrepreneurs and in entrepreneurial companies, business models for social impact, and the impact of experiential learning methodologies. Anup Srivastava is our Canada Research Chair in Accounting, Decision-Making, and Capital Markets at the Haskayne School of Business at the University of Calgary. He holds a BTech in Mechanical Engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi, an MBA in Finance from the University of Delhi, and a PhD in Accounting from Texas A&M University. He brings vast corporate experience of almost 14 years, and his research highlights key elements disrupted by this progression: accelerating corporate demise and emerging hyper-competition, the changing role of the board of directors, shifts in executive incentive plans, new auditing and financial reporting requirements, and a growing need for highly skilled human capital. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So throughout the discussion, we have the Q&A function enabled at the bottom of the screen. So please ask questions. This is going to be something that we want to encourage as a two-way discussion. But just to kick things off, let's start with the round robin of everybody weighing in on why they see Alberta challenged in terms of people leaving. And what does that mean? Is it unique to Alberta? And I'm going to start with Anna. I'll go to Jeanette, and then I'll end with Alice.
In my view, I think there are bigger changes happening in the world. The world is no longer dominated by General Electric or General Motors or Ford or Exxons of the world. The center of gravity of the world has shifted towards companies like Facebook or Amazon or Apple or Microsoft. Just to give you an idea, these companies put together, their market cap is about $10 trillion, FANG plus Microsoft, which is 6 times Canada's GDP. And these companies are not reliant on land, buildings, factories, warehouses, labor, and capital. To them, talent is the most important input. And so the global trend, the movement towards talent, and the talent, as you rightly said, talent flows to where the opportunity is. This is something that we are witnessing, and we are part of that overall scheme of things.
Yes,
thank you, Adam.
I agree. I think it's kind of a chicken and an egg. Do people follow the opportunities, or do these new jobs come from the availability of talent? And I think right now, Calgary is really, and Alberta is really going through a massive workforce transformation to support the acceleration of the digital economy. I think that there is a war for talent right now, not just locally, not just in Canada. I think this is globally. And so I think we're seeing a lot of transition. We're going to be seeing a lot of movement. There's going to be a lot of focus on how do we create an agile and adaptable workforce so that we can better withstand the ebbs and flows of what happens to our economy. I think that we're really looking at transitioning to support diversification and the needs of the new economy. We're seeing substantial growth and development there. And with so much of our workforce that's been entrenched in the oil and gas sector, many of these individuals from the oil and gas sector or our youth are not aware of the new opportunities that are happening as a result of diversification. So it's really critical that we do as much as we can to share what those new opportunities are, what those new skill sets are that are required for that, and how do they crosswalk from their skill sets into the new opportunities for the new jobs that are available from our new economy.
Alice, your thoughts?
Yes, I will reinforce what Jeanette is saying, that I think, in fact, a lot of people don't even know what opportunities actually exist out there. We have a few areas that, in my opinion, are just blind spots. So because most of our economy is business to business companies, I think most of our youth in particular, they see the world through the eyes of consumers. They don't even know these cool jobs exist. And so that's a big issue. Another piece of it is that we have aging talent in some areas. So this doesn't affect the university, but our tradesmen are getting older. And we need a whole new generation of men and women to become tradespeople, not just for the oil and gas industry, but for alternative energy sources, for the new medical device industry we'd like to build, all these things that are coming out of the university, and that can be, our future. So we need that. And then the third piece of that is that we have an aging entrepreneurial class who are ready to retire. So who's going to take up all those cool small businesses that are across this province, and who's going to take that lead? I don't think our students know about these opportunities. And so one of the jobs of the university is to find ways to have them experience that and see where they fit.
So I want to just pick up on something both of you said, and it's about this global war on talent. Did we completely mess up the demographic analysis? Because this is not something that is unique to North America or Alberta. This is happening, as you said, around the world. So how did we miss the demographic analysis on this issue? Because everybody's fighting for the last unit of labor, which we know can be inflationary, gets out of hand. So I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on that.
Yes, what I would say is that the oil and gas sector has been such a strong sector for our economy, and we've had to be very responsive to the needs of that sector. And the demand has been so great, and we know that we've had some of the most engineers and tech talent with respect to the oil and gas sector in North America. However, with the downturn of the oil and gas sector, all of a sudden the acceleration of the digital tech economy and the pandemic, we've been hit with a triple whammy. And we have to work very quickly to ensure that the workforce is aware of what those new jobs are. We're seeing technology job growth outpacing other job growth in the economy by 6 to 1. And so with that amount of accelerated skills demand, we need to make sure that we're collaborating on a government, post-secondary and industry front to ensure that we're aware of what are those new opportunities, and to ensure that there's that investment that's being made in both degree programs and short-term upskilling programs, and that the community and industry as a whole is making that investment for continual upgrading to ensure career sustainability. Careers are no longer linear. Careers are going to be in a situation where individuals are going to have to keep their skill sets up to date and in line with the rapid pace of technology. And so individuals need to now see where their current skill sets fit for those new jobs. And there needs to be more investment in skills mapping to determine, how do I get to those new jobs and why do I want to stay here? Well, you take a look at the skills mapping report that we recently did with ICTC, where it showed that oil and gas professionals, a great number of them, have 50% of the skill sets maybe for a IT project manager or a data analyst. So we've got the Edge Up program to help top up those skill sets, and through short-term reskilling, transition to tech training, as well as work integrated learning to help these individuals get back into work as quick as possible for these new career opportunities.
So Alice and Anna, I'm curious as to what your perspectives are, because Jeanette's talked about work integrated learning and preparing students for a career that's non-linear. And so what does the university need to do in order to make sure that the students are prepared to adapt to this changing environment that is happening so quickly? So I'll start with Anna and I'll go to Alice after.
So I'll go back to economy. When you're talking about labor and capital being the main factor of production, the whole emphasis is on efficiency. How do you wring efficiencies from physical capital, as against creating a new business idea which is scalable and potentially a world winner? An Airbnb solving the housing problem for the world. It needs a different set of entrepreneurial thinking. It's not talking about discovering a new oil field which will best utilize to get the most dollars out. It is creating a new idea which can potentially scale up to be the next $1 billion or next $100 billion solution. And I think that's what is required. A total pivot of competencies from focus on physical world to creativity, to creating new ideas and creating new businesses. And Jeanette made a very good point, which is the chicken and egg. How do you create that ecosystem where these businesses start thriving and the young people are attracted to? That's what they're looking for, because they have opportunities. And when talent is itself the main factor of production, they are the wealth creator. They are the ones who benefit. It's not the capitalists. So how do we make the talent themselves to be the wealth generators and keepers of that capital? That's what is required in our education system. Alice?
Well, you have a front row seat to this.
Yes, I do. I was just going to say, it's lovely hearing a accounting colleague go rah, rah, rah around entrepreneurship. So for me, there's two aspects to this. One is the whole concept of entrepreneurial thinking, the way we are developing it at the University of Calgary, and I'd like to say at many of our post-secondaries across the province. Part of that is just that people take an ownership of their careers and see their careers not just as jobs, not just as doing startups, but moving between the two, so that, maybe you're not doing your startup when you're 20, maybe you're going to do it in your late 30s, but having that in your mindset from the get-go and taking ownership of your career path, that's essential for nonlinear careers, because you need to own your pathway. The other piece of it is, how do we get students into these experiences? The University of Calgary has a lot of work integrated learning experiences, and I'm happy to say the whole province has committed to increasing work integrated learning. At the Hunter Hub, for example, We have a grant from the federal government called Experience Ventures. And we just have a myriad of different kinds of experiences, very short term, slightly longer term, where students of not just undergrads, let me make that clear, undergrads right through to postdocs, we're encouraging people to actually see themselves in a startup situation, get to know entrepreneurs, work in situations where they're solving problems and helping out. Because we can't be what we can't see. There's that old trope, but it's really true. If I don't know what it's like to work in a startup, I might be afraid to work in a startup.
Right.
Instead of saying, hey, this is going to be exciting. I'm going to do this for a year or two. If it works out, I might do it for the rest of my life. If it doesn't, I'll move on to the next thing and not be afraid of that, but go for it.
So that sort of speaks to, there's an adage I've heard often that in the United States, there's a mentality when students graduate college, they say, you know, it's not that who am I going to work for, it's when am I going to start my own business? And we have a very different mentality. I'm curious, I mean, Anna, you were in Texas, maybe you can speak to that, and Alice too, because you've had some experience in the States as well. So curious as to what your thoughts are.
So, you know, Inc. magazine has said, and again, Alice is an expert in entrepreneurship, 60% of startups are done by people who have worked in a similar industry. They drop out and start a similar business. So if we're talking about the future being fintech or software or e-commerce solutions or something innovative, which is again based on intellectual capital, people would rather like to go to places where they can experience that. Texas started this a long time ago. Texas is a strange place. I've lived there. I did my PhD there. Austin is it's like almost like an oasis in a desert, if I can say so. You know, going back, Texas Instrument, Dell, they've had some very big tech companies. And UT Austin itself, you know, it has created that culture. Austin itself, South by Southwest is not just music festival. Surprisingly, it is an ecosystem that brings venture capitalists and tech people. Elon Musk has spoken in can you believe it, in a music festival. So there's a vibrant culture that brings people together who are bursting with ideas. So despite thinking of Texas as an oil country, it has also been able to create that vibrant culture where they can make Elon Musk shift his headquarters, the world's most valuable automobile company, more than the rest of the 5 automobile giants put together, moving from California to Texas. That's really something.
Alice, start my own business or go work for someone? How do we change that?
I think it's a question of when, not whether. And part of how we change that is that messaging. I think we have far too much media influence that people only see entrepreneurs when they look in a newspaper, and those entrepreneurs tend to have a very limited type. Now, I'm not going to diss on journalists, not when I'm talking to Deborah Yedlin of all people. But we do need to broaden our stories.
Yeah.
We need to broaden, like, you know, what do entrepreneurs look like? We have some amazing startups in this town, started by Indigenous people, by women, by young people, by old people, you name it. We have amazing startups. And the more that we can show the different career paths people have followed, I think the more likely we create that energy. And to Anoop's point about the music festivals, we have some great music festivals here too, but we also have the most amazing environment, like hiking, skiing, skating, winter, summer, you name it. We could be building that ecosystem around people who just love this nature.
Yeah, what I was saying was that South and Southwest, being a music festival, also became meeting ground for tech people. In fact, Elon Musk went on stage. You know, some very big tech heroes have gone and spoken on those stages. So they use that platform to bring some tech giants onto that stage.
So you're saying that
we can do that here too. I think we can. In fact, I heard a story a couple of years ago. So I do a course where I get the students into the neighborhoods, and then all our assignments are in one neighborhood. And the idea is so that the students can really see how interconnected businesses and communities are. And we call it Street Challenge. We've had a lot of fun with it. We're in Inglewood, and we're learning about companies moving from the States to Calgary because they like the lifestyle here. And these are gaming software companies. These are not oil and gas companies, gaming software. And in fact, we have a number of gaming software companies. Jeanette has the statistics. I have a few of the stories that I catch on my way through town. We could do this stuff.
So Jeanette, why don't you just elaborate on what Alice was just speaking about? Because I think that's part of what people don't understand. I mean, I ran into a guy at a bike store who was telling me that he was making soft goods for bike packing. He was based in Inglewood. I had no idea that he was here. So he's another type of an entrepreneur. He was a small house manufacturing type. But tell us what you're seeing as far as this sort of diversity of opportunities concerned.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the opportunity story is some of those small business opportunities that aren't necessarily, you're not necessarily hearing about them on a day-to-day business. But if you really take a look at Calgary's story, it is changing. That diversification story is changing. The diversity of opportunities is changing. We're building on our strengths really to prepare for the future, for innovation. And if you take a look at agri-food, tech, life sciences, financial technology, that's where we're really seeing growth. So, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 1 year ago, we weren't really talking about Calgary as a quantum city. And the fact that now there's that investment and interest and opportunity to become a world-class hub of quantum science. It's happening right now at the University of Calgary. Quantum computing is huge in the world right now. Cybersecurity, Calgary is a leader in cybersecurity. You're seeing programming across all the post-secondaries to support that demand. Artificial intelligence and machine learning. All of these things weren't talked about 5 years ago in Calgary. I think a lot of people aren't aware that Calgary, for those who had been thinking about leaving, that Calgary has the greatest head offices per capita across Canada. That means jobs that are supporting that. You take a look at 8 of the top 10 world banks and 7 of the top investment banks have an office in Calgary. Wealth management and private equity and asset management services have thrived here in Calgary. You take a look at, we've got the highest number of GDP per capita of major cities in Canada. People aren't aware of that. If you take a look at our GDP, 1987, there was 47% on almost reliance on oil and gas. Now that's worked to 28%, and you're seeing an increase to 20% of finance, insurance, and real estate, or professional, scientific, and technical services. We've got as Alice was referring to, we've got the second highest, smallest business concentration of major cities in Canada. So small business is a critical play. And then if you take a look at from 21 to 2024, we're going to lead the way in a digital economy and post-COVID recovery with spending $7.5 billion across industries on digital transformation, according to a recent IDC spending guide. So you're taking a look at 2.3 billion of that, or 30%, will be spent in energy and environmental sector. So a lot more clean technologies and renewable energy. You're taking a look at 70% of it will be in sectors outside of energy. So you're, again, financial services, creative industries, which is huge right now in Calgary, retail, transportation, logistics, life sciences, agribusiness, and manufacturing. So our forecasted spend is to be 37% of the provincial forecasted spend. So when you take a look at that, all that spend and all that investment, why is that important? That creates jobs. That attracts other companies to Calgary. And so it's really important that we continue to share the story of what those new opportunities are, because there's significant opportunities. And that's just been showcased with the emergence of unicorn activity that we've seen in the past couple of years, where Benevides has reached a $1.1 billion value. Parvus Therapeutics, it's another $1 billion value, and they partner with out of San Francisco with Genentech. ShareWorks, that's a proud story for Calgary, where they started here, went to the US, 2 locations in the US, and chose to come back to Calgary for quality of life and for the talent. And averse, they're 1 billion, combining with RS Energy Group. So the story for Calgary is changing, that diversification is changing, and jobs follow that. So it's really important that we take a look at and we share the stories of where those new jobs are happening. Aside from that, we're seeing RBC come to Calgary. We're seeing Infosys come to Calgary. all those are ranging from 300 to 500 additional jobs. So on a weekly basis, we're hearing these announcements, and whether it's from the large companies or from the small companies that are trying to scale, talent is always the number one critical issue. And one of the most critical things that we need to really understand is when individuals say they need talent, do they need senior level talent or entry level talent? Because as you know, we can't build senior talent quick enough. So all of our talent initiatives have to go hand in hand with some talent attraction initiatives to get some of that senior talent in so that they can help mentor and help build that talent we need moving forward as well.
So, we're sort of going to start getting into some of the Q&As that have come, the questions that have come in, but one of them sort of speaks to what you just talked about. And you've heard there's a shortage of senior tech people to mentor the juniors. So how do you partner the tech skills of the young people with the knowledge base of the older workers? And we don't have too many people that were sort of part of that tech wreck in 2000 who stuck around and are still working and who could mentor. So how do we bridge that gap?
Yeah, I think that's probably our biggest challenge right now, quite frankly. And I don't think that challenge is just for Calgary. I think that's all of North America. Everyone's looking for that senior talent. I think we need to make individuals aware of the opportunity here and the quality of life and the fact that we want to make sure that we showcase the fact that we're more inclusive city. So we have to make every effort to make sure that our downtown is vital. But I think that we really have to have understanding as to what are those skill sets that we need, and to foster a one-on-one mentorship, either within an organization once that talent is brought in, or in at a post-secondary level through a work integrated learning opportunity. I know that there's a focus to try to get 100% of training right now in work integrated learning, which is most critical, because the longer an individual has an opportunity to apply their skill sets, the greater opportunity there is for long-time career opportunity with that company. So I think that, really we need the senior talent formula is going to be a critical one for us, but that's why there's really a real emergent need to identify where are those markets so we can tap into, and to ensure that Calgary is considered one of the top choices for destination for this. That's why we have websites like our Live Tech Love Life, so people are more aware of the new opportunities here and an opportunity to belong in our community as well.
So I want to just take on pick up one of the threads that you mentioned, and it's, and Alice has mentioned this too, great place to live, great environment, et cetera. So we're moving into this world, I think we call the digital nomads. The digital nomads are here to stay. Mm-hmm. They will be working wherever they want, and they'll choose where they want to work from based on what the particular jurisdiction has to offer them. So what kind of an opportunity does that present for Calgary? How do we attract those digital nomads? What does that mean for Calgary's economic growth going forward? I'm going to ask Anna to start, and then Alice, and then Jeanette, because I think this digital nomad concept, no one's really got their hands around it yet, and I think there's a place for Calgary to play. Let's hear about what that might be.
So my first comment, hearing what has been being said last 7 minutes or so, there is no problem at all.
Okay.
It looks quite rosy. Well, there is a problem. That's why we are here.
Right. There is a problem.
There is a problem. And so when you're talking about digital nomads, these are the people who have established themselves and they can afford to work wherever they want to.
Anywhere.
And so if you're talking about the ecosystem where you bring, think of Silicon Valley, it's not just, it attracts the best talent in the world. 2/3 of the startups there are started by immigrants. We were talking about some of the largest corporations in the world, Microsoft, Google, Adobe, they're headed by immigrants. They've created a culture where they bring the people together, where there is mentorship, where failure is accepted, and that people are going from one idea to another. So it cannot be, now if you're part of a job where you're doing certain things, for example, if you're coding, then maybe you can work from far away. But if you want to be part of that ecosystem, then you have to be physically there, because you're physically meeting. Yes, I understand it's a Zoom world, but let's go back to normal world. So I think there is a bigger issue here, which is going back to the chicken and egg, in creating those ideas, not wringing efficiencies from capital, but creating new business ideas. That will be the potential new unicorns tomorrow. Bangalore created something like 30 unicorns. It's a similar size city as Calgary. How come they could create 30 unicorns while we are talking about 1 or 2? Why can't we create 10 unicorns? And I think that's the problem.
Like, what are we missing? Why is Bangalore creating all those unicorns and we're not? We have a few, but we don't have what they have.
I think Alice can best answer that question, but we need to pivot our mindset from bringing efficiencies from land and capital to creating new business ideas that potentially have global solutions. That is the key. Okay.
So we're not looking at opportunity the same way somebody else is looking at it.
Absolutely.
In Bangalore. Is that the idea?
People are not working today. The youngsters are not working for that next $30 or $40 an hour job. They're potentially working for a startup where they can end up with $1 million or $10 million or $100 million stock options. That's their
right. Idea. Okay. So they're not the same risk takers we'd like to be. Is that right, Alice?
Yeah, I would agree with that totally. And I think that's partly because we are an economy that's based, if we, let's say traditionally oil and gas, I know it's actually not that much of our economy, but let's look at oil and gas. You have to be very careful. You have to be cautious. You have to be risk averse. It's big money and potential of huge environmental damage if you are careless. And I think rightly our industry locally in Alberta can be proud of their achievements. But the fact is that we have to be risk averse in those areas. Now we're asking people to go to a different way of thinking and no longer be risk averse. It's a culture shift. And I think that's a fair point that Anup is making, that this is actually a big thing we're asking of our communities and our networks. And the other piece of it, which we haven't touched on yet, I've talked about business to business, but let's face it, also, we have a lot of extractive industries. The feature of extractive industries is that you sell to a market. You take whatever price is on offer. What happens in Bangalore, what happens in the unicorn companies that were created here is these are companies that are creating value and they are setting the price. And they can set the price because they are not in price taking markets, they're in price creating markets. And so they're creating a lot of value, they're reaching out to different markets. And some of that is actually going to be a problem for us in Alberta, because where is our deep depth of marketing and sales skills? In the B2B world, that's a lot of personal selling. It's a lot of, even in the modern Salesforce world we live in, it's a different skill set. And your typical traditional resource-based company just doesn't even need those departments very much. So this is a big shift for us to think about. And how do we bring that talent into town?
Yeah, so it's not just the tech talent, it's also the marketing and how do we understand how to grow and tap into unmet demands globally. I just wanted to digress for 1 second though. In the world before 3D seismic, there was a lot of risk in the energy sector, and you did risk a lot of money and sometimes didn't come up with much success. So there is a generation of individuals in town who were successful, but they also risked a lot. And that cycle of risking and reestablishing companies created that entrepreneurial mindset that we have in Calgary. The challenge, and I'll just throw this to Jeanette, is it's been good for energy, but we now need to shift it to other industries and sectors that we're not as comfortable with because we don't know as much about that. So how do you sort of pivot and say, okay, let's go entrepreneurial from energy perspective, entrepreneurial into something else that's not quite as well defined?
Yeah, I think it's more sharing that, what is that opportunity? I think people need to be aware of partnerships, create greater partnerships between industry and post-secondary as well. I think that investment in technology these days is, in particular in Calgary, when you talk about the shift for all types of sectors. We used to talk about finance or agriculture. Now it's fintech, creative tech, clean tech, right across the board. Everything has that tech spin with it. So it's in getting those individuals who were high investors in the energy sector to show them what the new opportunities are and and to ensure that they provide that partnership, that collaboration with post-secondary to help build those talents required to help build industry. I think that there's huge economic growth opportunity right now if we can get that investment in education in particular right now, because I think our biggest challenge in Calgary and across Alberta is in, again, that transformation of our workforce. I think we are behind on it in comparison with other cities, and I think we need to move fast with this. I think we need as much collaboration as possible, that government investment. I think we need industry investment to get to where we potentially could be, because Calgary has truly, we've been very proud to have some of the smartest workforce in North America. And it's how do we take that talent that we had and re-engage them back into become an economic powerhouse again, that we have that potential to be.
So there's a couple of questions that are interlinked in a way. So one is, what ideas do you have for mid-career non-tech locals with great admin, service, and management skills who've been left behind? And it's also, there's another sort of lifelong learning. How do we migrate the Alberta population to that lifelong learning? And is micro-credentialing the best way to do that to go forward? So I think those two questions are actually linked. Alice, do you want to start?
I'll just focus on the micro-credentialing because I can only put so much ideas in my head. I think that this is a strong movement in the whole province. I can only speak to what I know is happening in the University of Calgary, where we are building micro-credentials into the degree programs, but we also have them outside the degree programs. And of course, continuing education is developing a lot of very powerful programming to help with reskilling, working with partners in the public sector and in the private sector. So there's a lot of energy, and maybe people don't know about it. Go do your research, because there are opportunities. Again, I feel like we're focusing mostly on coding and tech, but maybe that's just my perception. Data analytics, all this kind of wonderful stuff that's happening. We do need more salespeople, I'm just saying, and they get paid better than everyone else because getting a customer is a gorgeous thing. So I'm just making a plea out there. If you like talking to people, you might want to consider this career. But yeah, the micro-credentialing is going to be one pathway that allows people to be flexible and turn their retraining into jobs a little faster than a full degree program. Maybe you'll then continue to build on it and get a full degree.
Yeah, I mean, what you want to do is to see that you want to use every input of labor to contribute productively to your economy. And so how do you do that when you've had such a profound shift in terms of the economy that's dominated a certain area? And what do you think is possible? Maybe you draw on what else has happened in Texas in order to take those workers and transition them to something else. Is it work integrated learning? Is it internships? And what do you do with people who were mid-career and now are facing some challenges?
I think one has to think about what solutions one can provide to the people in the world.
Okay.
To leverage on tech. And so in fact, I'll bring two of my Harvard Business Review articles here. Sorry to bring them out, but the first one was called "No, WeWork is not a tech company." It's very easy to use the word tech company. So it was a classic article. WeWork had used the word tech 110 times in their prospectus, and we all know what happened to WeWork. And we also recently wrote about a company. It's called Zomato. It's a food delivery company in India, and we said why it is a quintessential tech company. And here's a $20 billion market cap company which doesn't even have an office. By choice, they do not want to own any asset. They want to provide solutions. So what I think where Calgary people are experts in doing business. They understand problems. How can we leverage on tech to provide solutions? Not writing code, not helping improve the efficiency of some operation, but can we provide a solution, and a wholesome solution, as Alice said, bring the whole marketing, the sales angle to it, create a package. And it goes beyond, we're not just talking about software solutions, but there are many things, engineering solutions, there is hydrogen that is emerging. Can we create solutions for the world? And domain expertise is the prerequisite before we dive into that tech part. That's I think is the best chance for Calgary.
Okay, so Jeanette, domain expertise. I think he's just hit on something that's really, really important. Why don't you take that what is our domain expertise and what else do we need to do to make it successful and benefit the city?
You know, our domain expertise, I think, is really, we do have talent that has solves a lot of the, you know, world problems, world challenges, and, you know, especially with the energy sector. And it's how do we repurpose them back into be an economic contributor? And so that's why a lot of these reskilling programs for mid-career workers is really critical. You know, again, for the fact that they've got 50% of the competencies for these new opportunities is really important. And one of the things that we learned from them is, you know, many of them have had 2 degrees and a PhD. And we're starting to, we wanted to prove that the value that these individuals bring back to the economy. And now we're starting to hear from employers that are recognizing these individuals have a really, with their new technical skill sets that they're learning, matched with their previous skill sets, business and professional skill sets, they come in as a much stronger candidate with their hybrid of skill sets that they bring to the table. So I think it's how we utilize that. And that also comes into play as to maybe why we were losing some of our younger talent is, you know, a lot of those parents have not been able to re-engage back into the workforce. So of course they're going to be saying, you know, well, there's not opportunity here. So, you know, the more we re-engage that talent back in to provide great value for our economy, make their lives that much more healthy and wholesome, I think that, you know, our economy as a whole will be much stronger by re-engaging that talent and growing that talent moving forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's one of the questions that's come in, like, how do you re-engage that talent and make sure that it can be applied in other ways? There's a question I'm going to throw it out because it's a bit disconnected, but it's relevant to our conversation. We had an election in Calgary yesterday, and we have a first-time female mayor who immigrated to Canada. We have a new mayor in Edmonton as well, who's also from India, as is originally our new mayor-elect, Jyoti Gondek. Her heritage is also from India. So what does that say to investors looking at Calgary and Edmonton, potentially in Alberta? How do we look at the province differently today than we did before the election? Who would like to take that?
I think part of what we don't leverage enough is our immigrant connection, because our immigrants connect us to the world, really. And so I know of one company, for example, here in town, PhD in engineering, executive MBA from Haskell, working in the oil and gas industry, but got interested in education technology as well. And his coding team is in Egypt. Now, I could not go to Egypt and I could not build that coding team because I don't have any connections there. He does. And we have immigrants from all over the place. And all of those connections can be talent pools, they can be customer pools, they can be many things. So the future is bright as far as that goes.
I think too that kids can't, I think that a lot of companies are realizing that in order to get the talent that they need moving forward, they need to prove that they are part of an inclusive city there. And I think that by seeing that representation on our city council, I think that it shows that we do embrace this in Calgary. Our community does come together in this aspect, as well as it allows our youth of tomorrow to see that they too can become a mayor of Calgary or provide, you know, a CEO of any organization in Calgary. I think if you can't see yourself in it and you don't see others in it, you can't aspire to be that.
Can I take a stab at it?
Absolutely.
So I wrote a management science article, which was aptly called "Are Immigrants Complements or Substitutes?" And the title says it all. Are immigrants complements or they substitutes? So are you treating them as the ones who come and steal our jobs away, or are they the ones who create value? So let's talk about Silicon Valley. As I said, 2 out of 3 startups are created by immigrants there. Some of the biggest tech companies today have immigrants as their CEOs. So when you have to create the vibrancy, when you're talking about lack of certain skills, one has to look globally. There's a war for talent going out there. That's number one factor. Number two, Calgary is a great place. I've been here for 4 years and I moved. I was a part of an Ivy League university. I came here by choice. It is a great place. So talent around the world is looking for a great place to live. This is a great signal that an immigrant comes here and can become a mayor. If we can bring that vibrancy, because one of the factors, we're talking about, again, the topic today is, why are youth moving away? Youth are moving away because their peer leaders are moving away. So they are moving where their peer group is going. If we can reverse the traffic, if we can bring the smart people in, if we can have something equivalent of an H-1B program of United States, or an EB-1, Extraordinary Ability 1, where they attract the smartest people, if we can attract that because of our great lifestyle, it becomes a magnet for people to stay back. We're talking about mentoring, we're talking about ecosystems. If we can bring them in and create that vibrant culture and have that startup culture, perhaps that's one of the solutions we can look for. So instead of treating immigrants as substitutes, let's treat them as complements and creating value.
Well, I think David Card, the new Nobel Prize winner in economics, basically that's what he won the Nobel Prize for, right? So that's certainly one of his theses. But I think you've hit on something really important, and I think it's about opportunity. And it's about partnerships. And a question just come in, does Mayor-elect Dondick's call out of climate crisis provide a business opportunity to Calgary? Is it just rhetoric, or does it in fact make the world sit up and take notice of our capabilities around sustainable energy related talent? And I guess the thing there is that, when you look at the energy sector itself, it utilizes every scientific discipline, and the opportunity to solve this problem, in theory, should be attracting all those scientific and creative minds to solve it. So if that's not happening, why not? And what do we need to do to get people to either stay here or come here to help us solve this challenge?
So I think start. Go, Jeanette.
Okay.
Go, Jeanette.
So
I think Alice and then Anna. Yeah.
I think we utilize that talent that is the closest to that, and that is the oil and gas talent that is there. And by better utilization of those skill sets, by reframing what the energy story is in Alberta, to talk more about the clean technologies and sustainable energy production. I think by utilizing that talent that we already have in place, I think that we can move this agenda forward quicker. I think that, but the big challenge with that is those new transitioning to clean technologies and others doesn't create the same amount of jobs that the oil and gas sector had, where we had thousands and thousands of individuals. Yeah. I think the fact that digital transformation is helping companies do more with less. So we're still going to have to repurpose other individuals into, perhaps career adjacent opportunities.
Alice?
Yeah, I teach in our executive MBA program, and I coach projects for these participants. And the thing that's been so striking to me over the last couple of years is how many oil and gas engineers come to my class and then they want to do projects in carbon capture. They want to do projects in hydrogen. They want to do projects across the spectrum. So there is a tremendous amount of interest in that 35 to 45 petroleum engineering, industrial engineering across the full spectrum. I've learned a lot thanks to them, so I'm very grateful. But it seems to me that of the people I've met, we need to not only help people recontextualize their own skill set so that they can see themselves in other industry contexts with the same skill set. And that's a mindset thing as much as anything. But we also need to recontextualize how we all look at these skills and these people, because they are very capable. And sometimes I worry that they get stuck in the oil and gas pathway because they sometimes don't have the courage to move out, or maybe we haven't had just quite enough opportunity. But I definitely see, at least in the subset that goes for further education, a lot of enthusiasm for moving into adjacent industries, solving really, really big problems. One of my students volunteered for a UN committee to help look at how to regulate hydrogen globally. Like, who does that? That's a weird volunteering opportunity, and yet good on him, because that's the kind of outreach and leadership we need in Alberta.
That's very cool.
That is very cool, isn't it?
That is very cool. Yeah. So, and Jeanette, you're looking at this as well. I mean, this is part of what you're trying to do, is help people in this context. So what else can you add to what we've just been discussing?
Yeah, I think that we also need that investment for funding to support these individuals, because they're not going to be able to re-engage if they can't afford to get back into to take the training.
So are you talking about scholarships? Are you talking about government support of workplaces? Like what? Yeah. What are you looking at?
Scholarships for sure, but government investment more. You know, when you've got individuals who have 2 degrees and a PhD that are saying to me that, you know, I can't get back in because I can't afford it. I've been unemployed for 5 years. And so first, now we've demonstrated that we know that they've got relevant skill sets for the in-demand jobs out there with the bit of upskilling. So we really need that continued provincial and federal investment dollars to help support upskilling and reskilling in our region. That's going to move us quicker with that collaboration with post-secondary to where we need to be, because without that investment at this time, since many of our individuals have been unemployed for quite a while, we may not get there as quick as we want to.
So just a couple of questions, I think, for Alice and Anna. One is that, you know, industry mentorship with those who are undergoing a career transition, what does that look like? But also, Brooks sent in a note saying that was an oil and gas, BCom, MBA, and is now looking at data analytics and having trouble finding opportunities in Calgary to utilize both those business skills and the data analytics. So do we need to also look at things like internships that are provided to UC alumni? Do we have to think about the alumni relationship differently as well in order to help graduates who have been displaced from traditional jobs in order to help them succeed? I'm just a sort of a bigger question, I guess, but I'll start with Alice and then we'll go from there.
I think it's a really interesting idea, because when we talk about work integrated learning and internships and co-ops, we're always talking about currently enrolled students. And I would say that based on my experience on different campuses in, you know, 3 or 4 different countries, we don't do as well as we should with alumni engagement. We don't do as well as we could with helping our alumni, you know, staying in relationship with them and then continuing to be relevant. Who else in the market is organized to provide short-term work experiences? I mean, co-op structure is something that universities do, isn't it? And so, yeah, maybe this is a great idea. I'm going to take it back to work. Got to think about this. How do we do this? How do we do this? I think it's a great idea.
And at the end of the day, we want to provide that sort of infrastructure for people a node for people to plug into, so they know where they can go and find those opportunities.
And just as an add-on, like, how many people get jobs through their co-op and their internship experiences? Because interviewing people can be very deceptive. You think you know who you interviewed, but you've only spent 45 minutes with them. Let's be honest. So the internship is a very valuable recruiting tool that allows you to assess how adaptable a person is to your environment. Well, how can we provide more of that in our economy so that people can make career transitions across industries more easily? Anoop, over to you. You've thought about this even more than I have.
Yes.
I've thought about future of education with the changing, accelerating pace of change. And I think the whole business model where a person in late teens comes and takes a degree, studies for 4 or 5 years, gets a degree and rest on his or her laurels for the rest of the life is a history, because skills are becoming obsolete every 4 or 5 years. And it will start with 10 years, it will come down to 4 years, it will come down to even shorter level. So I think what is required is not that massive upfront investment, and to milk that investment for the rest of the life, people will have to come back to school every 4 or 5 years. It will become a norm. So it is almost like we'll have to sell, as educational institutions, we'll have to sell a base antivirus software and keep on sending upgrades on a daily basis. Similarly, we have to come out with a solution where we keep on upgrading and upskilling the competencies and knowledge level every 3 or 4 years. It'll be a part of life.
Yeah, so we're moving away from that industrial model of education where it's one and done. And yeah, and then looking to have industry also more engaged in that reskilling and upskilling process, it sounds like. Jeanette, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I would also add to Anoop, I would say not 4 to 5 years, I would say almost on a yearly basis, as
Oh.
you can see for some individuals and how quickly certain things like technology is advancing, accelerating. Individuals are going to have to keep their skills up to date on an ongoing basis. And I truly think that it's going to be that collaboration with industry and post-secondary and training institutions to make that it's going to help create the pool of talent that we need moving forward, because I think we have to move really fast with this. I think that individuals, it's no longer a one-shot deal. It's a constant upgrading of skill sets by everybody. And we need our workforce to realize that it isn't, you're not taking one course as an opportunity to get a job. You are going to be having to commit to lifelong learning, but that's an exciting part of the process. And we're going to create a more agile and adaptable workforce for Calgary that's going to respond to industry needs much quicker, I think.
So I'm going to ask, it's a quick snapper for each of you. It's the same question. You can't repeat what the other person said, but if there's one thing you can do to reverse the exodus from Alberta of younger people, what would it be? Alice, Anoop, and then Jeanette.
Can I just ignore that question and make the point that I want everyone to know that humanities and social sciences is part of this story. We need your critical thinking skills, your communication skills, all those skills that people don't always respect. They're really, really important in this new world. We need you.
Well, I just want to add that a BA means be anything. Anoop?
I will give the example of COVID vaccine. We created COVID vaccine in record time. We all work together. I think Calgary and Alberta can be that place where we create the clean energy solutions for the world.
Jeanette, last answer to you.
Sure. I think for us to promote the diversification story sooner and communicate what those skill sets are that are needed, because I think if people understand it and see how to get there, we'll do better with attracting companies and retaining companies in Calgary.
Well, on that note, that's an optimistic note to end. I want to thank each of you for being with us today. Jeanette Sutherland, Alice de Koning, and Anoop Srivastava for being with us and participating in this discussion. I want to thank everybody who joined us online. We'll look forward to seeing you at our next webinar, and you will get a link to this session in your email inbox. Thanks again for joining us. And if you enjoyed our discussion, please visit ucalgary.ca/community, where you will find more webinars, podcasts, and stories on topics that matter to you. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you again.